Hello and welcome to Unity. My name is Andrea, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to Unity of Fredericksburg's weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. For those of you watching on YouTube, live or later, be sure to say hi in the chat thread, like this video, and subscribe to the Unity of Fredericksburg YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Send an email to info@uofva.org to receive the Zoom link. And for everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all the details. Our message today comes from our minister, Reverend Cheryl Fair. And now, here's Reverend Cheryl.
Thank you, Andrea, and hello, everyone. Whether you are watching live or later, we are so glad to have you here with us online at Unity of Fredericksburg. So this year, 2023, one of the threads that we are following is what I'm calling just the foundations of the Unity belief system. And today we are talking about healing, which is one of my favorite topics. I could go on, but I'm going to try to maintain my enthusiasm to a reasonable length here today. So a lot of times when I'm bringing up a topic, I like to start with just a basic definition. What are we talking about when we say healing? So I looked it up, and here's what the internet had to tell me. What is healing? The process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. The process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. It's interesting because there's a sense of remembering there, right? Remembering our original state of perfect wholeness in spirit. And then when we come out here into the human world, there are bumps and bruises and things like that. And healing is that process of becoming sound and healthy again. So we engage in this process of healing all the time. And we're talking about physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. We do that from the time we are born, don't we? So birth itself is a noisy, messy, kind of traumatic experience, right? Where we are, we come out of that safety of the womb and into the world, and there's bright lights and it's scary and we're crying and all of that. And at that moment, we begin to learn and begin to practice soothing ourselves and healing ourselves. And we start that from the moment of birth. And as we go on, every phase of growth, if you think about it, every phase of growth in your life, no matter how beneficial it is, involves kind of that tearing away from established patterns, taking on new circumstances, and handling the healing that needs to happen for that for your life to go forward. So in some ways, healing is part of our nature as humans. Our bodies are good at it, right? Our bodies are naturally good at healing. Think about it. When you cut your finger accidentally, you don't kind of go into a depth of worry and depression and anxiety and looking it up on the internet. You basically trust that your finger knows what to do. You might put a bandage on it, but the cells of your body know how to come together and bring themselves back to a state of normalcy and wholeness. And it's just a natural process. And yet, as I'm sure you've noticed in your life, I've noticed in mine, that when it comes to something bigger or more involved, sometimes we can really feel overwhelmed. We can feel like the process of what's going on with our lives doesn't feel like it's in our control. So there's this this strange dichotomy that our bodies naturally know what to do, but in certain situations, we forget. We forget that we naturally know what to do. So we could spend a lot of time talking about why we forget and all of those circumstances. However, our focus today is just knowing that forgetting happens. We'll focus today on healing practices that help us to remember our natural power for healing, and practices that we can use to support ourselves in the process of healing, and practices that we can use to help manage our healing with more confidence. So again, this can be addressing situations in the physical body, emotional situations, spiritual, fork in the road moments that we have about what is mine to do and what's my purpose for being here. Healing has to do with all of that. So one of the prime examples of healing and healing practices that we talk about in Unity is the healing practice of Unity founder Myrtle Fillmore. And I know I have talked about this recently, and guess what? I'm going to talk about it again because it's such a wonderful example for us. So a little bit about Myrtle Fillmore. Myrtle Fillmore was born 2 decades before the American Civil War. She was the 7th of 8 children, so a lot of activity in her house, and I'm sure she ended up being one of the little kids in the corner that we're not quite sure what she's up to. And from the reading I've done, what she was up to was like getting the books that her older siblings had from school and reading them, and so she was kind of ahead of the game. However, she had some physical challenges. So a book that I'm going to read a little bit from here is a book called The Unity Movement. It's by a gentleman named Neil Vahl. That's Vahle. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but let's learn a little bit more about Myrtle. So she has been described as a sickly child. So she was unwell. Here's what our author here has to say about it. This is kind of dramatic. Listen to this. Disease lay like a dark cloud over much of her youth. She was afflicted at a young age by tuberculosis. Family members on her father's side had been stricken with it, and Myrtle was assumed to have contracted it because the disease ran in the family. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? So there's a belief that was in place that if people in your family had tuberculosis, you would get tuberculosis. However, as far as I know, that's not a genetic condition, but it was clearly in the belief system of the family. Now, they probably, of course, just caught it by association of living in this, same space. But it's interesting that the family, believed that, wasn't surprised that she was sickly because other family members were. Here's another little bit. Myrtle often suffered from poor health during the early years of her marriage also. So she does manage to get through school and become a teacher, and at a certain point hooks up with Charles Fillmore. And here are words of Myrtle. I was fearfully sick, she recalled. I had all the ills of mind and body that I could bear. Medicine and doctors ceased to give me relief, and I was in despair. I was supposed to be dying or very close to it. And that would have been when Myrtle was in her early 40s. So at that point, she and Charles had 2 children. And she was, as described in that quote, at a point where she had been told that she could expect to die. Now, both Myrtle and Charles were always religious, or we might say spiritual seekers, because They were looking beyond the religions that they grew up for answers, and they were doing a lot of reading and attending lectures and things. And at one point, they attended a lecture by a person named E.B. Weeks. And it was at that lecture that Myrtle Fillmore had an epiphany, that she realized how she had been doing things in the wrong way. She had been believing her entire life that which she was told by the adults in her life who loved her and wanted to keep her safe. So they wouldn't let her go out and play in the snow because she was sickly and they didn't want her to come down with a fever. She believed all of that. So she had been carrying these beliefs. And in this lecture by E.B. Weeks, she all of a sudden made what is a naturally logical progression of, if I believe in God, if I believe that I am a child of God and I inherit all that is good in that which we call God, then there's no way that I can inherit being sick. That's not possible. So she came away with what is a very famous affirmation that she used as she went into her own healing process. I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. So she started working with this change of thought, and her process is documented in a couple of places. And right now I'm going to read to you a few quotes from a book called How to Let God Help You, which is a collection of writings from Myrtle Fillmore. And let me find where my little flags are here so that we can hear a little bit about her process and what she did once she came to this realization that I am a child of God and therefore I don't inherit sickness. So here's what she says. Here is the key to my discovery. Life has to be guided by intelligence in making all forms. The same law works in my own body. Life is simply a form of energy and has to be guided and directed in the body by intelligence. How do we communicate intelligence? By thinking and talking, of course. Then it flashed upon me that I might talk to the life in every part of my body and have it do just what I wanted. And then later on, she says, a little bit more reading, and then we'll go on here, but I love reading the words of Myrtle. Here she says, I went to all the life centers of my body and spoke words of truth to them, words of strength and power. I asked their forgiveness for the foolish, ignorant course that I had pursued in the past when I condemned them and called them weak, inefficient, and diseased. I did not become discouraged at their being slow to wake up, but kept right on, both silently and aloud, declaring the words of truth until the organs responded. So there are some key portions of Myrtle's approach that you can use too with whatever's going on in your life. So let's look at the first one. She talks about forgiveness. Now, in her case, she was talking with her body about forgiveness because she had, from the time she was a child, believed herself to be sickly. So the messages her body had received for all of these 4 decades of her life so far was inefficiency and sickliness and disease. She had believed that. So she worked with asking and talking with every center of her body about forgiveness and setting aside those thoughts of limitation and disease and replacing them with powerful thoughts of truth. So this topic of forgiveness, because we're talking about not only physical healing, but emotional healing, spiritual healing. Look for yourself when you are dealing with your own healing. Look to forgiveness first. Because any space in which you are withholding forgiveness from yourself, or how I messed up those years ago with this key relationship, or how I made this mistake, or with others. Any place where you are withholding forgiveness, you are essentially blocking the flow of good in your life. And that can show up as a physical ailment. So work with releasing any grudges that you have. See all that is good, all those divine qualities in yourself, in your body, in any others that might be involved in your consciousness. See all that is good so that you can move forward with your healing. And of course, Myrtle talks about working with your words and your thoughts. So let go of any beliefs about your genetics, about your bum knee, about, I always mess this up, whatever it is, whatever the I can't or not enough words are that you're holding in consciousness, work on letting those go and adopting supportive and encouraging words. Imagine Myrtle sitting there talking to all of the systems of her body and encouraging them and just filling them with energy of truth, things that are true in your spirit all the time: faith, power, strength, all of these things. These are things that you can do, just like Myrtle did. Now, Myrtle was using, for part of her guide, another example that we can also use, and that is the healing ministry of Jesus of Nazareth. So according to Unity minister Eric Butterworth, who was a very prominent minister in the 20th century, a full 1/3 of Jesus's ministry that's documented in the Gospels was dedicated to healing. So just think about it, because one of the things that, we talk about in Unity of Jesus as being our way shower, our elder brother, we talk about him as being an example of what can be done in spirit, not an exception, because Jesus very clearly says that anything he can do, we can do. So back in the 1800s, the late 1800s, there was a real shift in consciousness going on, particularly in the United States, among many who were in this question. If Jesus tells us that we can do anything that he can do and more, can we not heal ourselves? So a lot of the religious institutions out there had kind of saved the healing for special people. Only special people could do that. But there were a lot of people in the late 1800s, the beginning of the 1900s. This is what was called the genesis of the New Thought movement, and Unity was a part of that, in these questions of healing. And there were a lot of leaders and teachers in different paths, some of them called religious science, divine science, also Unity, that were kind of reaching back to these examples from Jesus and bringing those forward and looking for truth and application around healing in particular. So when we look at the example of Jesus, how did Jesus go about healing? So did he, do some massage, lay on hands, make an adjustment, use some herbs, potions, incantations, rituals? No, he didn't do any of that. The most that Jesus ever did in the physical world was make a little bit of mud and put it on the eyes of a blind man. Otherwise, he was working 100% in consciousness, in the realm of the divine self, not the human self. All he did was see the truth of the person that he was working with, even if that person was not nearby, because he accomplished healings of just holding someone in consciousness who was far away. All he did was see the truth of who and what they were in spirit, in consciousness. And he's very often quoted as saying, by your faith, you are healed. He's recognizing the power of faith within the person. It's succinct, it's direct, and it's an acknowledgement of truth, a divine quality that each and every one of us has within us. He saw it, he claimed it, and he empowered others, and his example empowers us to do the same. Now notice the focus here is not on the physical, it's on the spirit and on the consciousness. And when we say consciousness, we're talking about thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and attitudes. So going back to Myrtle Fillmore, she was doing much the same, focusing on the consciousness. Here's one of my favorite quotes from Myrtle. We are not concerned about the results or outcomes, but the change in consciousness that makes the results abiding. We are not concerned about the results or outcomes, but the change in consciousness that makes the results abiding. Now, our human brains are very interested in physical outcomes, right? They're very interested in like healing the wound, overcoming the disease, whatever it is. But both of these examples that I'm sharing you about, the focus is on the inner, on the mindset, the thoughts and beliefs with which we frame our experience and, in fact, create our experience. Because as we work with our words and our thoughts, we change our mind around something, then we change our experience of it. And that, my friends, is healing. So we're not focused here on particular outcomes. That's something our brain likes to do. We are saying that using these practices will improve your experience of any challenge that you are facing. We're not saying that challenges won't happen, that things won't come up in the body, that accidents won't happen, that, problems in relationships won't happen. But what we are saying is that when you work with these practices, you can maintain your focus on the truth of what you are, despite what's going on in the outer world. And as we come to the end here, I mentioned Eric Butterworth, and I have a couple of quotes from his book called Practical Metaphysics by Eric Butterworth, where he's talking about this very topic. So, when you pray for health, positive faith will not make an incurable condition well. Positive faith simply turns from a focus on the negative appearance to centering of attention in the allness of God. And of course, we know that the allness of God expresses at the point of us. So one more thing from Butterworth. You are more than you appear to be, always. Positive faith is simply relating to the more. That's all. It's relating to the more of who you truly are. So when we are engaging in a healing practice, we are focusing on that more that we always are, that's beyond whatever's going on in the body or whatever might be going on in your relationships, and practicing healing. All right. So just a reminder as we prepare to move into meditation, start with forgiveness, my friends. Look to any aspect of your life where you might be holding back forgiveness from yourself or others or institutions, and resolve those, release them so that you can replace that negativity with thoughts that are positive and supportive, and see the divine qualities of all involved. Do so without ceasing and with devoted faith. and bathe yourself and your circumstances in the cleansing water of spirit. So we're going to move into meditation right now. So take a few deep breaths. Just really settle into your seat. If you wish, you can allow your outer eyes to drift closed. And very often, spirit is referred to as water. So just we're kind of letting spirit in different forms wash over us. I heard a wise person use that very image yesterday. Let the joy of spirit wash over you, shining the light of spirit into every dark corner. Let the peace of God wash over you, calming the storm of circumstances in your mind. Let the love of all that is wash over you, taking away whatever wants to be released with ease. Let the light of the universe wash over you, clearing your consciousness of anything holding you back, washing away anything that wants to be released with ease. So let's stay in this space, in the stillness, for a few moments together. Bring your focus now to the breath, moving in and out of the body as the universe breathes with you. And we continue that energy of just letting the energy of spirit wash over us, acknowledging this ongoing process of healing that is a part of who and what we are. So just come back to this moment, come back to your seat, and let's close our time together with an affirmation. So I like to put my hand on my heart and just really root it in the heart space. So it's not just in my head, it's in my body, it's in my heart space. Here is our affirmation. By my faith, I am healed and I am grateful. Say it with me, friends. By my faith, I am healed and I am grateful. One more time. By my faith, I am healed and I am grateful. And so it is. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, I am going to hand it back over to Andrea, who is our service leader today, to close out the YouTube portion of our morning here.
Thanks for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for